Your Denver Broncos just made a couple of much-needed changes, and they're happening just in time as we are sitting at the top of the AFC West, which is why I rocked my Denver Broncos tie all the way from Michigan at work today. If you're new to the channel, I'm a diehard Denver Broncos fan named Ben. Helps me in the YouTube algorithm out a ton if you like the Broncos, if you would like and subscribe. So just to paint the picture of why a change was deadly needed for your Denver Broncos, they've been one of the worst special teams units in the league. Arguably, you could say special teams cost us from being number one in the entire AFC West. If it was not for that leverage call on a bogus game against the Indianapolis Colts, your Broncos would be sitting at 5-1 and sitting at the top of the AFC. But in addition to that, special teams have actually regressed in other areas as well. We expected a massive jump with Rizzi coming to the Denver Broncos. We know he was a former head coach, interim head coach, and like the special teams darling of the league. Well, even with him, the Broncos are dead last when it comes to how much yards we're getting per return, and then we are the third worst when it comes to how much kickoff yardage we are allowing. It's horrendous, right? So this graph here was just put out today giving your EPA, and there's so much we got to break down here, but when it comes to special teams here, your Denver Broncos have the worst, second worst EPA when it comes to special teams in the entire NFL, which is just a wild, wild stat. So EPA is your expected points added. So the fact that every special teams play that the Broncos have, they are expected to score less points. Special teams should be giving you more points, right? Like getting better field position, and the Broncos have just been getting mauled there. A lot more we have to break down on this chart in a second. But to address that need, the change the Broncos made is they went out and got an absolute stud here. They got JT Gray, who was on the Ravens practice squad, but he is fully healthy and ready to go, and he is very, very familiar with what the Denver Broncos are doing. You are talking about not just a Pro Bowler, you're talking about a multi-time All-Pro player, meaning like he was the best at his position, and this isn't like years ago. This wasn't decades ago. This was just all the way back in 2024 is the last time he did this, and is just a tremendous gunner when it comes to special teams, and there's no way the Broncos are going to be third to last when it comes to amount of yardage given up on a kickoff, because this guy is an animal. You look here, back in 2021, he had 19 special teams tackles, 16 solo tackles as the special teams gunner on kickoff and on punt. Then in 2024, he stepped that up an even higher level and had 26 special teams tackle. He's the only special teams player who has had at least 10 tackles in special teams over in 4 years in a row. And then he's been a unanimous captain all the time he was with Darren Rizzi when he was with New Orleans Saints. So Rizzi knows exactly how to get awesome stuff out of him, and I think this is a phenomenal pickup for the Denver Broncos. Just taking a look at some of his highlights and what he brings. So first off, we're going to see like sick punt block here. So this is against the Philadelphia Eagles, who I can't remember. Did the Broncos play the Eagles? Oh, yeah, we mollywopped them, right? So you see him coming in here and just getting a huge block there in a close game. And then you see like what he really is good at is what we're going to see in some highlights here, and why people were shocked that he got cut. Just that this guy is the first guy down there all the time, and just a mauler when it comes to that. So very, very excited about those additions. And then the Broncos are like, hey, we didn't make enough moves today. Let's make this even better. The Denver Broncos offensive line, which we know all year long has been ranking at the top in all of pro football. This week with Matt Pert, we took a massive step back. So this is giving you our week 6 grades when it comes to each position and how they played. So you see our tackles were the best tackles in football again. Then this is our center play. So we saw a step back in Wattenberg. And then this is our guard play, and we know Quinn Meinert's played really well. So how low must have Matt Pert been to drag that guard play all the way down there? Some people are saying that the solution for this is like, hey, just move Wattenberg to that guard position and then bring Forsyth in at center, because you might have a step up in center and a step up in guard. The other thing is just it's gonna be interesting to watch is Sean Payton knowing that offensive line is all about chemistry, and in 1 week they're not gonna have that built, so he's gonna run it one more week. We were gonna keep an eye on that for sure. But the Broncos went out and added some decent offensive line depth here. They went out and got a former national champion, a former Big Ten champion, just a mauler of a man, and this is him right here. His name's Carson Barnhart, and he was part of a national championship with the University of Michigan. He came into the draft and had one of the highest RAS scores, so that's a relative athletic score. So they look at how tall you are, how much you weigh, how fast you run, how high you jump, all of that kind of stuff, and compare you to every other position player at that position all the way back to 1987. And out of almost 1,500 guards, he's 101. So really athletic freak. It reminds me a lot of Frank Crum, who's very much built in the same way, where he is just jumps off the page and jumps off the bus. And that's exactly what Barnhart was. He is a darling of Harbaugh, so it's surprising to me that Harbaugh let him go from the Chargers, especially with all of the mistakes and the issues they've had at offensive line there. That might be kind of a compelling reason, like maybe he's not as good as I'm hoping he's going to be after looking at these stats, but here are just a couple things people have said about him and his production when he was with the University of Michigan. So you're seeing here that in camp, even though this was one of the best offensive lines in college football and won a national championship, you had Harbaugh come out and say like he was the best player in their training camps at the University of Michigan, and that he's not just a great player on the field, but he's also like just a locker room guy and always looking to pull his weight. And then here is what the draft preview about him said, is that he's an athletic lineman who can do pull blocks, great in a zone run game, and can play guard and tackle. And then he made 31 starts for a national championship winning Wolverines. And he didn't just play well like against those like Rutgers and bad teams. He played well when the games mattered the most. So his highest rated PFF score ever was in the Big Ten championship game, where he had a 75.5. He only allowed 46 total pressures his whole time at Michigan, 2.4% pass rate, and he was playing against some beast edge rushers there. And then he was a part of the back-to-back Joe Moore winning offensive line with the University of Michigan. So that is the award that goes out to the best offensive line in college football, and he was a part of the crew that won it 2 times in a row. So I think that's just absolutely phenomenal and a great depth piece there. And now with Frank Crum, Throckmorton, and him, and knowing that we got Zach Strief as our offensive coordinator, you just trust that to them to develop that and those guys to be just absolute studs. So a lot of people are jumping off the Broncos bandwagon, the Bo Nix bandwagon, and saying like, oh, Bo Nix is a bust. He's having a sophomore slump. And I found this on Twitter and just absolutely loved it. Shout out Sleeper Broncos who pointed this out. Everyone's glazing up Drake May because he just like balled out of control against the New Orleans Saints, who are 1-5 and a pretty much garbage franchise. And he had 261 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Saints. Well, Bo Nix had 326 passing yards and 3 touchdowns against the Bengals, who have more wins and have the sack leader from last year. And you just look at the reaction, they're just totally different. And I'm sick of all of these places who are just really hyping up what they had in their pre-draft process and using that to justify what they think of Bo Nix now. The Broncos are in a perfect position here. We have 4 of our next 6 games at home, and I'm feeling absolutely phenomenal. A couple other reasons why I'm feeling phenomenal is going back to this EPA, is just seeing here that like if Bo Nix was bad, our EPA every time he passes the ball would not be a plus 41. You look here, right? The Chiefs are barely above us here. You look at teams like the Chargers, and everyone's talking about how great Herbert is, and like they're a plus 29, right? So Bo Nix, and when he passes the ball, he has a higher EPA than Justin Herbert. And then here, looking at this, the Broncos are leading the league in a stat you absolutely don't want to be, which is our negative EPA when it comes to penalties. We are literally shooting ourselves in the foot and are the most penalized team in football. And this is just not the place you want to be. And so I feel like you clean that up and you clean up this special teams thing. And we are talking about, obviously, the Broncos being at the top of the AFC, and that's something that we should make us incredibly, incredibly hyped. Other thing to keep an eye out is that the Broncos are at a disadvantage this week. Sean Payton intentionally avoided the bye week after flying back from London. The Broncos coming back over 7 time zones, so that's really hard on the body. And the stats from last week are that teams who had an additional rest over the teams they're about to play were 6-2, even though 3 of them were underdogs and probably shouldn't have beat the favorite in that game. So looking at Seattle and Atlanta and Chicago, all had an extra week of rest, or at least a couple of days rest. So you were having the Giants come to town after not playing since Thursday night, whereas the Broncos didn't get in until Monday early in the morning from London. So that's a pretty big disadvantage, but I just trust Sean Payton to have this thing cleaned up and us take care of a team that we definitely should take care of. Going back to this, you're looking at the Giants have a negative EPA with Jackson Dart. We should absolutely feast on that. They're only production comes when Scadaboo is running on them, and we've bottled up Breece Hall and Saquon Barkley, so I trust that we can bottle up Scadaboo, and that's really going to be the key to beating the Giants, but we're going to cover more about the Giants as the week progresses, as we're going to have a Giants creator in here. Guys, we went out and got a special teams ace, an all-pro. We have depth and options here for replacing Matt Pert or giving him more leash and just like trusting that to coalesce and to fix. I'm still wildly bullish on the Broncos. We got a 70+% chance of making the playoffs and making a deep run in the playoffs, because who wants to play against this Broncos defense? And we know Bo Nix made huge strides as the year progressed last year, and we're trusting that same thing is going to happen in Broncos country. Don't jump off the bandwagon. We got so much to believe in. Oh, that was halfway down.